There are 3 learning goals for this lesson. By the end, you'll be able to use correct computer terminology, explain the importance of software updates and system maintenance to manage the performance and increase the security of your computer, and describe different types of and common signs of intrusion, and explain how to prevent malware attacks. Let's look at some key definitions. Malware is a general term that refers to software that's designed to do undesirable things to your computing device. Malware includes viruses, Trojan horses, worms, spyware, adware, ransomware, and malevolent macros. A computer virus is software that has the ability to replicate itself so that it can spread from device to device. Viruses attach themselves to legitimate software or a document that supports macros like a word processor or spreadsheet file. You have to run the infected software or open the infected document for the virus to become active. Viruses can corrupt your system, spam everyone on your contacts list, steal your passwords, and take full control of your computer. They can spread to other computers through your network, email attachments, or files copied onto a flash key. Worms are similar to viruses, but they don't need to attach themselves to other software programs to propagate. They're often transmitted by email or flash memory keys. The most famous worm was Stuxnet, which is reputed to have been engineered by the CIA and was used to attack Iran's nuclear facility to stop their nuclear weapon development program. Spyware does pretty much what it sounds like. It spies on you as you use your computer and reports on your computer usage to whoever created it. Some spyware is designed just to report data to allow advertisers to target you with ads. Some is much more malicious and may collect user accounts and passwords to gain access to banks or other personal information. The information may then be sold to other organizations. Trojan horses are malicious software, often considered in the spyware category, that get loaded onto your system through methods similar to a virus, or they come disguised as legitimate software. They often do nothing for a long time, but when activated, they can do things similar to a virus. They can be used to allow cybercriminals to use your computer to attack other computers over the internet, steal your personal data, corrupt your computer, or many other nasty things. Typically, adware tracks your internet usage looking at the searches you do and the sites that you visit. This information is then sold to other web services which use that information to target you with ads that reflect your interests. Ransomware is software that's designed to lock the user out of their system until a ransom is paid. Once the ransomware becomes active, it encrypts all the user's data on the computer so that it can't be accessed. Once paid, the compromised computer is theoretically unlocked and unencrypted. Ransomware is often spread through other types of malware, like viruses and worms. Some documents, like Microsoft Word and Excel spreadsheets, include macros, which are effectively small programs that perform desired functions within these documents. However, it's possible for people to create macros which are malicious and can steal data or cause damage to the data on your system. For security, Microsoft Word and Excel warn you before you open a file with macros, and you can choose to disable them before opening the file. There are a number of risks associated with your computer being attacked by malicious software. Those risks include identity theft, where someone uses information they've collected about you to replicate your identity for fraudulent purposes, such as getting bank loans or a mortgage in your name that they never intend to pay back. Theft of banking and credit card information for fraudulent purposes. Access to services where you've saved your credit card information like Amazon so they can make purchases for themselves. Access to private accounts like your social media accounts, which could destroy your social media connections and assets. Deletion of valuable information, such as deleting all of your personal photos and videos. Theft of valuable information, such as taking your contacts list or your company's proprietary technology research. Corruption of data, such as destroying your customer database. A slow or unusable computer, such as using your computer to help generate false traffic to websites or video plays. Malware can be responsible for all these outcomes. A new threat has arrived in the form of the many Internet of Things devices that are being deployed in our homes. Internet-connected devices are often not designed with security in mind. This allows them to be compromised by hackers who can then use those IoT devices to attack other devices on your network. Smart home appliances like Alexa and Google Home Assistant also transmit private information out of your home. Let's talk about passwords. The most common method for making access to a device or service private is to require the user to enter a user ID and password before they get access. The problem, as we all know, is that we all have way too many passwords to keep track of, so most of us start using the same password on multiple sites. That means that if one of those sites gets hacked, the hacker can get access to any other site where you use the same user ID and password. As an illustration, Adobe reviewed the passwords that their customers were using and discovered that there were some commonly used passwords. 123456 was used by nearly 2 million accounts. 1 through 9 was used by over 400,000 accounts. The ever-popular password as your password is used by almost 350,000 accounts. And in a survey of user habits, 68% of people said they used the same password for multiple sites. That statistic actually seems much lower than I expected, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's much closer to 100%. So, what are the risks associated with passwords? They could get access to your bank account. That would be bad. They can impersonate your identity. This is also bad. They can access your social media accounts and destroy your personal reputation, as well as destroying assets like YouTube videos and photographs that you've created. They can purchase things online using your information, which is financially bad for you. You've probably heard advice about how to make our passwords safe, which you ignore because it ends up making passwords hard to manage. Using different and complex passwords for all your accounts and then using your browser's built-in ability to remember passwords makes it easier, but still isn't ideal from a security perspective. It also means that you have to type them in on every device you have, which for some of us can mean 4 or 5 or more devices, and anyone with access to that device can then access your site accounts. You'll still probably end up making a list of passwords somewhere. An alternative is to use a password manager like LastPass, Keeper, or Dashlane, or other similar services, which keep all your passwords in a central location and encrypts them so that only you can access them. You only need your password manager's password to get access to all the site passwords from any device. The drawback is that it includes a single point of failure, which introduces 2 risks. 1. If the password manager gets hacked, then all of your passwords are stolen, and 2. If you lose access to your password manager, then you can't access anything. The argument in favor of password managers, in the face of these 2 big risks, is that their business is security, and they're pretty thorough on their security, and there are safeguards in place so that you don't accidentally lock yourself out of your account. Two-factor authentication, or 2FA, is where the service you're accessing requires you to prove that you are who you say you are in multiple ways. The most common method you've probably encountered is where you provide an account ID and password, and then the system sends your phone a text with a code that you have to enter into the system. Some other authentication methods include biometric information like fingerprints or retina prints, additional personal ID numbers or PIN numbers, location, smart cards, and security tokens that generate a unique code that's synchronized with the authorizing computer. You'll likely continue to see two-factor authentication become more common on the services you access. There are some best practices for passwords that help to limit the risk. First, don't use the same password on multiple sites. Even if you did something like using the same password but adding the first 3 letters of the site name you're accessing, you would foil some of the attempts to access your account, and all of your passwords on different sites would be different. Use upper and lowercase letters, as well as numbers and special characters in your passwords. Don't use your name or words found in the dictionary. Admittedly, this is pretty tough to do, so if you're going to use real words, don't use words that people who know you might guess, and try to also include a small set of random numbers and symbols that only you know but that you can remember. For example, R3B exclamation mark. It's fairly easy to remember, and it's unlikely that anyone else would guess it. If you can remember a 6 or 8-digit random string to include, that's even better. So the combination of your chosen word and that random string just makes your password a little more secure but still fairly easy to remember. Make your password as long as practical. The more characters it has, the longer it will take someone to crack it. Considering using a password manager. And finally, turn on two-factor authentication whenever possible. File sharing and downloading are other behaviors that put your computer at risk. You may get viruses or other malware with the files you download, and you may be breaching copyright, which can result in legal action against you. Downloading best practices include keeping your antivirus and anti-spyware up to date, and only using trusted download sites to download legitimate software. Email has always been one of the ways that threats arrive at your computer. Spam or junk mail refers to unsolicited messages that are sent in bulk. Spammers typically collect email addresses, often through questionable or illegal methods, and charge companies to send out large volumes of messages. As annoying as spam is, the fact is that it has a very low cost to use, so that only a very small percentage of people have to respond for it to be financially viable. The security risks that arrive through email include viruses, phishing messages, unwanted images, links to fraudulent e-commerce sites, and other fraud. One of the most famous email scams was the Nigerian Prince or 419 scam. Without getting into all the details, the premise of the scam is that someone in Nigeria will send you a lot of money if you just send them a little money to help them free up the large amount. While these scams seem obviously suspicious to most people, many people have been fooled by them in the past, and variations continue to deceive people today. The bottom line is that if an offer you get through email seems too good to be true, it probably is, so just delete it and move on. Phishing is essentially a more advanced form of spam. Where spam might be promoting legitimate businesses or products that you can actually purchase, phishing emails are designed to make you believe they came from a legitimate business, but their primary purpose is to get access to your private account information. Often phishing messages come from banks, PayPal, eBay, or other systems that have access to your financial data. The email takes you to a website with a URL that often seems plausibly legitimate, and the website has been created to exactly replicate a legitimate business. The emails take you to a website with a URL that often seems plausibly legitimate, and the website has been created to look exactly like a legitimate business. For example, you might receive a phishing message that appears to come from your bank, which says you need to log in and change your password because of a security breach. When you click on the link that's provided, it takes you to a login page that appears to be your bank, and you enter your information there. By doing so, you've given the phisher your bank account ID and password. They can then get control of your account. When you receive an email from any site that wants you to log in and do something, take a look at the URL of the link that's provided and make sure it is really a legitimate link. When you put your mouse over the link, the actual destination URL will usually appear in your mail software somewhere. When you look at the URL, for example, the URL of University of Ottawa's main website, it's https://www.uottawa.ca/en or /fr. For security, focus on the part of the URL that comes after the https:// and before the first single slash. This is where the company's official web address should be. Anyone with a website can make a link on their site that includes the name of any organization they want after that first slash, but they can't make the first part of the URLs be the same as the official site very easily. If you're a hacker, you could make a URL to https://yoursite.com/uottawa, or you could make a link to https://uottawa.yoursite.com and point them to a nefarious web page on your website. So read the URL of links in the email closely, particularly if it's related to important site links like banks or social media accounts. Some email best practices include: don't open emails you suspect are scams. Don't open attachments unless you are sure of their source. Malicious code can be hidden in spreadsheets, Word docs, PDFs, etc. Don't forward suspicious emails. And use antivirus software that scans attachments. When we need information, our first reaction is to search the internet, whether it's through a web browser or, hey Google, through a smart home assistant. We have the knowledge of the world just seconds away. That's the good part of searching, but there are some potential downsides as well. While most search engines do a pretty good job of filtering out illegal and offensive material, it's possible to inadvertently encounter such material when searching. You also have to be aware of the fact that your search activity is being collected by the search engine providers and websites as well as your Internet Service Provider, or ISP. I'm sure you've all seen the results of this when you search on a product, and for the next week you get advertisements for that product following you around as you surf the web. It's important to be critical of what you find online. Always stop and think about the source of the information you encounter, and ask yourself whether the source is reliable. Ask questions like, why did they post that? Does it make sense? Are any other credible sites reporting the same thing? You should also be aware that some web pages look like they're supposed to be fair and objective, but may in fact have been paid for by the company or product that the web page is about. If you saw a product review of web search engines including Google, Bing, Yahoo, and Steve, and the review showed Steve the overall winner, you probably need to question whether the article is truly objective and fair. Some best practices for searching on the web include critically assessing the validity of the information you encounter, being aware that some content may be paid for by companies, and setting your browser security settings to block some undesirable content. Gaming online is hugely popular and a way of life for a lot of kids, but you need to be cautious in these environments. The risks include becoming addicted to the game, inadvertently giving away personal information that can be used against you, or used to steal your identity, or gain access to other accounts, and getting your computer infected with malware by downloading pirated games. To avoid these issues, be aware of how much you're playing and look for alternatives, even if there are other computer-based activities like software development. Keep your antivirus and anti-spyware software up to date. Choose an obscure username in games and don't reveal any information about yourself during chats. And finally, avoid pirated software. We're going to wrap up by talking about signs of intrusion and general best practices. Your system may be affected by malware if you encounter any of the following situations. Your computer is always running much slower than it used to. Your friends complain that you keep sending them spam. You have new toolbars installed in your browser that you don't remember installing. Pop-ups appear spontaneously in your browser. There are applications on your computer that you didn't install. There are unknown applications starting when you start your system. And if you look in the Task Manager, there may be apps or processes running there that aren't associated with legitimate software. This can be hard to diagnose, so be very cautious in investigating this area. Finally, here is a summary of best practices to keep your computer and you safe. Keep your operating system, antivirus, and anti-spyware up to date. Keep all devices' firmware up to date, including routers and Internet of Things devices. Only download legitimate software from reputable sites. Never disclose personal information. Choose obscure usernames when you create accounts. Use complex passwords and don't reuse the same password on multiple sites. Consider using a password manager to track all of your passwords. And think and look at the URL before clicking on any link you receive through email. With all that, hopefully you're one step closer to keeping you and your computer safe.